pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are all present this evening. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to propose one change to Section D on public hearing. I propose that we move item 2, the Massey Forest Home agenda, to the first item.
Okay, sounds good. And then the Mont Medi application will become the second application. That sounds great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have an agenda. We don't have minutes. I guess we'll have those next meeting, Ms. Summers?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That takes us to the first item on the agenda this evening, SUP 23-3-01, Massey Forest Town. Ms. Summers, would you mind to introduce that?
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Massey own property located at 11 Meadow Road Lane, consisting of approximately 344 acres. They wish to operate a tourist home and to use the old schoolhouse as a tourist home instead of a long-term rental as it has been used for the past 34 years. The structure is on the National Register of Historic Places and designated as a Virginia landmark. VDOT had no objections to this request. The health department commented that they had no record of the septic system, but from a site visit, there is in fact one installed. The system can continue to serve as dwelling as it has for several decades, with the understanding that if the system were to fail, that the owners would have to go through the required procedures to repair the system. Staff recommends the following conditions: a maximum of 4 guests, no food service will be offered to renters of the facility, and this terminates upon the sale or transfer of the property.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. And the applicants are present. Did you all have anything to add at this time?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think the application stands on its own merit. With this, it's something that we thought we would try. As she said, it hasn't been rented for 34 years. And we just thought we'd try something different. Thought maybe it would not be as much wear and tear on the house with this. Thought we were also complying with the comprehensive plan of agriculture and tourism. So if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't think we have any at this time, but we may after the public hearing. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll go ahead and declare the public hearing on this particular application to be open. If you have any comments on the Massey Tourist Home application, you're welcome to come to the microphone, state your name and the district in which you reside, and make your comments on the application. Is anyone here for the application? Oh, Anita.
Anita Ramos, Hampton District. These are my neighbors, and they run a good piece of property, and I also have them cutting hay on our property, so I do have some extra interest in them. Needless to say, these are wonderful people, and they will do a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Is there anyone else? Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, and with that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I think this application is in Hampton District. Al, did you want to make a motion, or do you have any comments?
No, I think it's very appropriate, nothing wrong with it, and I would, just one clarification I think it should be is that transfer excludes any family transfer, so the transfer to the family, that is not a legal transfer, only the seller. That should be clear.
So is that a motion to approve it with that clarification?
Usually we ask every other member if they have any questions.
Okay. Did you have anything?
No, I have nothing.
I just have, the recommendation is for a total of 4 guests, that we typically have that for 2 overnight guests per bedroom, but I don't know if that's restrictive. Would it be appropriate that I would allow for 2 couples or a couple and a couple of kids, but are you okay with the 4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that's all.
Mr. Atkins, did you have any comments?
Only comment I had, I think it's a good fit, looked like a good fit for me.
Mr. Ritter?
Your comments, it's such a lovely house.
Mr. Sis?
A lot of history, I'm sure, so it's, you know, the comprehensive plan, I've got no problem.
Mr. Sherlin?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I didn't have any comments or questions either. I thought it was a very good application and addressed all of the normal concerns.
Mr. Chairman, well, from now on, will all the applications go to BOS from now on, or is this a BZA?
Well, it's not completely tied up that it'll go to the Board of Supervisors yet. We still have to have our public hearing on that.
So what's the earliest date that this will go to, it could go to BOS?
What's the timing on that, Michelle or Mary?
May 1 is the public hearing.
May 1st is the public hearing for the joint meeting for
Right.
Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission. The BZA could have a preliminary review of it at their meeting next week. But if at that May meeting it's voted, then it would go to the Board of Supervisors in June.
So it could go, depending on what the board opts to do, it could go either way. But the way things have been leaning, I would expect it will go to the board in June.
So is this to make a motion, is this a motion to pass it on to the BZA or to BOS?
I would state it both ways, just so our bases are covered.
I make a motion that we approve the application as submitted, with clarification on a transfer to a family member is excluded to either or BZA or supervisors. Our recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Henry.
second that.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll be in touch about whether you need to be at the BOS or the BZA meeting as soon as we know. Thank you. That brings us to the next item, the Montmedy Conference Center, special exception 22-07-01. Michelle, did you want to set that up for us again, please?
Yes, please. Montmedy owns property located at 513 FT Valley Road, consisting of a total of 36.5 acres. The property is currently an orchard and market, as well as raising around 100 head of beef cattle. Located on these parcels is approximately 10,000 fruit trees and a market building. It is operated seasonally from June through November. It is currently proposed to have a limited number of special events such as weddings, reunions, gatherings at this location. Attendance for such events would be on an average of 100 to 150 people. All events will be closed by 10 p.m. as to not disturb the neighbors. No new buildings are proposed, but temporary tents may be used for some events. The applicants are proposing a 5-year term limit for the permit if approved. Per the health department comments, they have installed a septic system. The health department also stated that they could use portable privies during such events. VDOT commented on the application, and the applicants have installed and upgraded their entrance, and VDOT has approved it for this use. Staff would recommend the following conditions: 1, up to 12 events per calendar year. 2, maximum number of guests for each event shall be 150. 3, available for events June through November. 4, no amplified music after 10 p.m. 5, compliance with all state and local regulations. 6, if the property is sold or transferred, the permit will become void. And 7, the permit expires 5 years upon issuance.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. And I know the applicants are present this evening. Did you all want to speak to your application at this time?
Thank you very much for your consideration. Obviously, this is my very first time attending one of these, so forgive me if I seem a little nervous. So we came, we've been in the county for over a decade now through our property ownership, and we bought the old Kilby Farm, which is Montmedy, and then the additional acres that we bought, we added to the tract. And so, we were part of the Rappahannock County Farm Tour, and so we had such interest in the farm, and people came by and said, oh, what a great venue to have a wedding. And so we're like, all right, well, let's think about that. We've got to go to the county, talk to them about it, and see if that's something that's possible. And so, all we're asking is basically to put up a temporary structure of a tent. And I know a lot of people are concerned with the term conference center on the application, probably raising a lot of eyebrows, but this is part of agro-tourism for the county. I feel it'd be revenue generating for the county along with what we can produce, and we donate a lot to, anyway, I don't need to go into our charitable contributions to the county, but all the food banks throughout Warrington and Rappahannock County, Madison. And, anyway, we're trying to be very good stewards of the land, and whatever we can do to bring agro-tourism to the county to just bring more revenue into the county that we know it needs. So, but thank you for your consideration, and happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
I think we'll probably hold our questions until after the public hearing, but thank you very much. And so we do have a public hearing scheduled for tonight, so I'll go ahead and declare this portion of the public hearing open on the Mount Medi application in particular. If you're here to speak on that application, please come to the microphone and state your name and the district in which you reside. And this will be your only opportunity to comment on the Mount Medi application.
I'll start off. Adam Baroza, Piedmont District. I live about 2 miles south of it. I am 100% in support of what they're trying to do. I think it fits like theirs with our comprehensive plan, agritourism. I'd also say for all of our neighbors that are worried about traffic and noise, I would say we should work together to try to get VDOT to disallow trucks, which can't seem to make it all the way down 231, as people might have noticed for everyone who tried to go home about 2 weeks ago. And Connie would park the sheriff out there for all the motorcyclists that seem to think that's their raceway. Those two things have a much larger impact than 50, 100 cars that come along. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Is anyone wishing to speak on this application? Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. In the back.
Hi, my name is Claire Lindsay. I live down the road on FT Valley Road, Upper Inland. And I just want to say that I think Aldous and his wife are doing a beautiful job.
I'm sorry, if you could please speak in the
Sorry,
microphone.
doing a beautiful job at the orchard. And this is not about saying nothing can happen. It's different. But we've been through this before with, years ago, the Scruton family who owned Montpelier, the old Montpelier mansion, wanted to have a conference center there. And it wasn't a conference center as we would imagine it, by the Marriott. It was going to be inside their house. And they wanted to have outdoor events. And they had a number of outdoor events, and they were very lovely, things, and not a problem. But the noise carries enormously in the FT Valley. It is a valley, and noise goes right down the valley. And I remember being in my house, and I'm not right around the corner from you guys, but this is the kind of thing that people want to do on FT Valley Road. And there's another piece of property that's across the road from us that's for sale, and I can imagine this exact same proposal coming forward. But to my point, I was inside my house vacuuming with all the windows closed. It was allergy season, and I could hear the music next door because it reverberates and it bounces off the mountains. So my big concern, my two concerns, and I agree with Adam 100%, we've got a traffic problem on 231 that is severe. There are cops that sit outside our gate and wait for people to arrest or to give tickets to for extreme speeding. They're talking about 80 miles an hour because it's a runway right there. So that is definitely a problem, and yes, they have created a much safer entrance. But this is only going to add to our traffic, so we have to be mindful of that. But more than that, when there are weddings and when there are parties and when there are family reunions, there's music. And more than anything, I think my neighbors agree, we'll see who else wants to speak. I really, really would like to work with the family to get an agreement whereby music stops, say at sundown, and that preferably not be able to be heard beyond the property lines. And that is exactly what the agreement was with the Scrutins a few years back, about 15 years ago. So I have the agreement that was made for the Scrutins Conference Center, and I have all of the provisions of it. And the other thing I would say is it would be really unfortunate if all of the events occurred within a short time. Wedding season is typically May, June, maybe September, October. I could imagine there being 4 events, one every weekend. That would be, I think, worrisome potentially if there's a noise problem. And so I would ask that we could all work together to come up with some provisions that can make everybody happy.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? I think you have to hear.
Hi, I'm Anna Marie Marr, Piedmont District. If you don't mind, I wrote something. I'm here today because I fully support the request for Mont Medi's special use permit. Farming is a really challenging business, as we all know here in Rappahannock, especially a fruit orchard. I know I actually worked at Mont Medi for 2 seasons. The owners treat their employees with a great amount of respect, and they were absolutely wonderful to work for. They love their customers and are really proud of what they've done, what they've created, and let me tell you what they did in a very short period of time at Mont Medi to create an orchard and to produce fruit like that is pretty amazing. They really care about sustainable agriculture. To me, their fruit is just arguably the best around. But at Mont Medi, they're family owned. Even the kids and grandparents join in to help on the farm. It's a small community. And if you think about it, community support for them and other agricultural businesses in Rappahannock is what we need. Without the support of customers and communities, these small farms struggle to survive. We talk a lot about shopping local in this community, and in this instance, I see those against this special use permit just not wanting events like this, and they're close to their properties. I live approximately 1.2 miles from Sharp Rock and 1.5 miles from Belmead, who have had throughout the years the history. Reunions, weddings, events such as this with music. Not once have we ever heard any music from those venues. And they're also subject to the 10 p.m. noise ordinance. So I'm here to tell you that when I heard people that were concerned about this special use permit, I was really quite surprised. So the location of Mont Medi is so beautiful. It's such a magical place with the views of Old Rag. And it's sad to me that there are those against this small family-owned orchard business that want to have events. They want to share their beauty and help others, to enjoy Rappahannock. So even if I were to hear music, maybe 12 nights a year out of 365, I think that's a very small amount. It's not a big concern to me. I'd love to see this place thrive, but also they provide employment to residents in the county, and we need that. So after all, isn't love and tolerance how we get along? And I hope my Rappahannock neighbors will wholeheartedly support the special use permit, as we are a community that supports one another here in Rappahannock County. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
My name is Sharon Luke, and I live on FD Valley Road. And I've been to their facility with my grandson. It's a wonderful place. I was a little worried about traffic with the limit of 150. I'm not as worried, but as Adam referred to a few weeks ago, we did have a tractor trailer turned over, and people had to be routed on Holland Road, Quaintance Road, and Slade Hill Road to get around the accident, and it was terrible for everybody. Hundreds of cars had to go back on this road. So I just hope that we don't have any traffic backups. And I was wondering if we could maybe put a 2-year review instead of 5, and we see how things work out. That would, if everything works out as we all hope it will, that this will be a great event. And other than that, those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is Jane Smith, and I'm from the Piedmont District, and I just want to underscore what Sharon said. The farm is beautiful, the trees are beautiful, but I'm really worried about the traffic, especially on the weekends. The other day, there was maybe 30 cars that went by over 55 miles an hour with the numbers on them as if they were in a speed racing, the motorcycles on the weekend. And because the road is so curvy, which nobody has talked about yet, it's not just the speed. When you come out of any driveway on FT Valley Road, you look right, you look left, and then you go as fast as you can. And I do worry about people coming out of events, and there are many accidents, people all the time. So that's a huge concern.
Thank you, Sharon. Anyone else wishing to speak to this application? Yes.
Jeff Smith, live on FT Valley Road for 22 plus years. And I'd like to add my agreement with those who have complimented Mount Medi on the beautiful place that they've done. I patronize it, enjoy patronizing it. So I really have just a question. I underscored the traffic situation, and it's about what kind of precedent are we setting here for the FT Valley. The FT Valley is a conservation and ag district. That's one reason we were attracted to it 22 plus years ago. It's also on a scenic highway. Since January, there's been this application and the application for, I think 15, maybe more than that, tourist home rooms times 2, so, adds up. So there is property for sale, who knows what the future holds. But I'm just curious what, if any, precedential effect, is the constant, change by 1,000 cuts or a hole in the dike or whatever is occurring here. And again, I'm not rising in opposition to it. I'm just asking the question. This is my first appearance before the Planning Commission, and I'm not well steeped in how the process works. But I'm not putting you all on the spot to answer me now, though I'd be happy to hear anything you have to say. But I guess I would ask that you just kind of noodle it when you're making your deliberations on all the permits, those here today and others that may undoubtedly will come before you in the months and years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this application? All right. Seeing no other hands, I'll go ahead and declare the public hearing closed. This is in the Piedmont District. Mr. Sisk, did you want to speak to this application?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions, and I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. Mr. Pinky Humans?
Very good.
Okay. You referenced the tents. What size? I mean, you may ballpark, I'm not holding you to it, but height more?
What I measured out, I think it was like 40 by 60, and it attaches to the back, it would attach to the back of the market building.
Okay.
So most of the presence, coming down FT Valley, from Sperryville, heading south, most of it's behind the building.
I know I've been by there several times myself, and as a deputy, I actually sit on that road, and you do. It's, people are flying through there, but that's pretty much in the road in Rappahannock anymore. But the one question I do have, you suggest 5 years versus 2. I realize 1 year to revisit that's not fair because you're into this year or whatever. But I would be more amenable to a 2-year reevaluation as opposed to a 5.
Yeah, I don't think this is our first, even thought contemplating this. So, if 2 is a concession to, it took us that long to go through the paperwork. So basically, 2 years is a concession, that's fine, because, for line of sight concerns, the entrance is at the bends, so you can see a mile and a half one way and almost 3/4 of a mile the other way from the main entrance at BoardDocs, where we had installed the entrance. So as far as, coming around the corner and not having a place to stop, that's why there's actually 2 entrances into the property at this point, into that large parking. We cut it for hay, but this time of year it's hay and then turns into a parking lot in the fall.
And there was one other thing I had, it's kind of hard on the iPad and without my glasses, but your parking, where exactly is the drain field there? And I'm asking just for clarification, I guess.
The drain field sits to it actually goes back, it's pumped back up towards the orchard, towards the road. So if the building sits here, the pump station here, and the drain field is actually up and to the left. It's within the fence.
But it's not, your parking area would not be open?
No, it's all inside the gate.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Did you have anything, Mr. Sherman?
Could you pull up the last map on, I guess on the application? The last map? Yeah, page 20. So these are the subject properties here, these two?
Why is it not that good?
Sorry. I'm just trying to get an idea of like where the shed is and where parking would be.
So here's the bend in FD Valley Road. So we have an entrance here, and then the orchard actually, the building I believe sits in 5B here. And so the orchard actually extends over into Montmedy farm over here. So the orchard is actually much bigger than the 36 acres. So anyway, this is the entire parking area. The building sits here, and then all the trees, and they're up in the hill here. So basically, it should be right about there.
Okay.
So what I'm saying about the line of sight to the curve on the road from here, that's what, you got 1,300 feet this way, and then however long.
Okay.
So the rest of the farms.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm in agreement with Mr. Siss in regards to maybe a 2-year trial on this. And I think we're kind of in the process of addressing these traffic situations for events of this size anyway. I think that's something we can take into account while we're doing that too.
How many people, on a really busy weekend, how many people go in and out of your farm now?
Well, a couple hundred.
So it wouldn't really be,
I hate to ask you, but could you use the microphone?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So they're
You might want to
actually,
just have a seat.
I'll
in the
wait a
front.
So I would venture to guess on a good Saturday or Sunday, it's a couple hundred people. And also keep in mind, I can't shut down the orchard for a wedding.
yeah,
So the economic consequence of that also doesn't make sense for us as trying to run a business. So for me to shut down the orchard from, call it 3 o'clock to 7 or whatever time frame, that's busy time for the orchard, and people want to come and pick and enjoy the beauty. So personally, I don't even know when these events might occur, but obviously not on a very busy weekend unless somebody wants to pay me a lot of money, which you guys get the tax benefit of it. But anyway, so from that perspective, but like the Rappahannock County Farm Tour, I mean, the parking lot was busy, cars came in and out. And also, I mean, as a precedent, hire the sheriff's department to come there, and I don't care if that's in the application, because I'm going to pass that cost along to whoever wants to have an event there, to have a sheriff's department post a deputy on the road to make sure that there's no traffic problem. So anyway, my point is we'd like to be very accommodating, and if it works out, great. But again, to have it on a prime day is just never going to happen for the orchard anyway.
I was just thinking that a wedding probably wasn't going to increase the traffic that much more than what you're already getting.
You would assume most people would arrive at one time and most people would leave at the rest of the time, you know, at the end of the event.
But in terms of the number of cars, it's just not going to be.
Yeah, it's.
And then you're right next door to Belmead, right?
Yes,
And they frequently, or they used to have weddings and events. I think they probably still do.
it's quite possible. I mean, I don't.
So, but you haven't noticed that?
No.
You don't hear the music all night?
I don't.
What is the question? Dave?
Do you have anything, Tommy?
Yes, it sounds like you already prepared to address some kind of traffic control.
I'm sorry, sir, Tom?
It sounds like that you're already prepared to address some of your traffic control disabilities.
Well, if it's deemed necessary, I wouldn't see why we wouldn't want the sheriff's department involved. I mean, if it's that much of a concern, you know, any kind of, anything that would help or, you know, alleviate any concerns, I'm very happy to add that into a stipulation.
Another question, what is your thoughts as far as a shut-off time or closing time?
Well, I mean, that's why we went with 10 p.m., which is, you know, I mean, first of all, it's a long way to leave if you're not staying within the county. So most venues would probably end earlier to depart unless they're staying at a, you know, a tourist home or, you know, an Airbnb, again, providing more revenue to the county by bringing people in. But, you know, it's pretty cold in November. So from that perspective.
That certainly sounds reasonable to me, and I would go along with the recommendation of the 2-year period as well. Because then I think they'll have a 2-year period there where you can see how it works and may affect or not affect the neighbors that have some concern, and the 2 years and come back and address any kind of issues that we may have.
Okay.
Oh, sure thing.
I'm Kathy McGinnis and Augus's wife. And I just wanted to, since Belmead was brought up, I just wanted to say that Mike and Susan they're friends of ours, and also they're very much involved in the community, as are we. And they're very much in support of us doing this. And I think part of that is she knows the way we run our operation. We are not loud music kind of people. We are not, I'm all about keeping the natural beauty of Rappahannock. I'm all about being a steward for the environment. We've hosted the RLEP, Stroll for the Soul. Just want you to know that we care more than anyone. We don't want loud raucous parties. We have had our own personal events, and that's probably, I don't even know if that's wrong of me to say, it's our own private property, and we've had a couple of bluegrass bands. That's, you know, it's music that I don't think really carries, and I want all of the people who are hesitant about this to know that we're right there with you. We don't want to create more traffic. We don't want to create more noise, and so if we, you know, could come to some fair agreement limiting the amount. I mean, just to have, you know, my best friend's daughter's wedding there, I want to be able to do it, and I want to be able to do it legally without upsetting anyone. And we would be very willing to work under the stipulations that everyone agrees upon. And I just want to thank you for your consideration. But we are not here to cause all sorts of confrontation. That's not us. We're about sharing our bounty with the community and with folks that come down from the city who want a little touch of nature. And so we're here we would like to just open our place up on occasion in a very, very restricted, well thought out way. But thank you for letting me speak. And I just wanted to say, Susan, did write an email.
To Gary, I
Yeah,
believe.
we received it.
Okay.
We all received a copy
All
of
right,
it.
I just wanted to make sure you all were aware. Thank you so much.
I guess, I don't want to horn in if you're not finished, Tommy, but I do just want to talk about noise because it does seem like that is the sort of big question mark in a lot of people's minds. And since you all are so forthcoming about it, which I really appreciate, you know, that's what can make an application better if there can be stipulations added to where everyone's a little more comfortable with it. But it sounds, do you want amplified music or do you not want amplified music?
Well, like when the bluegrass band, the Gold Top County Ramblers came, I mean, they have a little speaker, but it's not like it's electric guitar. I mean,
I mean, they do have a speaker.
but it's not, I don't think it's anything that would really carry. As a matter of fact, I mean, any time that when I know that Mike and Susan have had parties, we've even been, and we haven't heard music carry, but I don't know.
Is there an amount of time that you would be willing to commit to? Like if it ends at 10, would you expect it to start at 7? Like no more than 3 hours of music per event? Or is that something that you would be willing to commit to? Because
We're willing to really be flexible all the way around. I mean, this isn't our main purpose.
Okay.
Our main purpose is to grow and sell peaches and apples. This is just what we think would be a nice gift to the community if done on a small scale, right?
Yeah.
I think amplification is always kind of a tricky thing, since you're asking him to step up to the mic in an indoor setting.
Right.
You know, it's just kind of weird.
Well, and it is true, as I know was stated in the public hearing, noise carries strangely in the valleys, things that you wouldn't think would carry far, and then things, it's just almost the opposite of the way it should be sometimes. But I did know when I saw this application, I thought, oh, I know that noise carries strangely in the valleys. And that was my primary concern. You all have answered my questions about the location of the tent, which I appreciate very much. I drove by and there's so much orchard, I sort of thought, well, where are these 150 people going to go? Which is a nice problem to have, you know, that you're so dedicated to the farming aspect of it. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Did you have any other questions, Tom? I'm sorry, go
I don't have
ahead.
another question, I just have another comment. For those of us that have lived in this county all of our life, and I have, FT Valley is pretty well known for bluegrass music. There are some good bluegrass music bands that have come out of it. So it's nothing, from my perspective, nothing strange to hear bluegrass music coming out of the FT Valley. And that goes way back. And like I said, there's been some good bluegrass bands that came out of FT Valley, good people. And they all got along, they never had a problem. I truly don't believe that they'll have a problem with your music and your events that you want to have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Gary?
Yes, thank you. I guess I have a couple of basic questions. One I think is obvious. The plat shows a proposed building, but that building exists. That is the building. So you're not building anything.
No.
And with respect to the parking, do you have an estimate of how many cars you can accommodate? Is that consistent with?
It's probably 5 acres, 6 acres of land.
I mean, typically there is a formula. I mean, I feel like we should be confirming that. It seems like it's not an issue, but typically we will make.
You could probably park 600 cars.
Okay. And is that parking area in view of the road, or is there any kind of screening?
It's next to the road.
To me, and I'm speaking from someone who used to have events, it's, from a zoning perspective, you're lovely people, and I'm sure you have great intents, but people, when they want to have weddings, have visions of what they want to do. And and I think for all of us, and this goes to the point about precedent as well, we can't make a zoning decision based on the fact that you seem like lovely people who only like, low-level bluegrass music. So I do think it's incumbent on us to put that in some kind of, objective form if we're going to think about it. Because I'm sure if you just open for business, not everybody who wants to have their wedding there is only going to like acoustic bluegrass music. And it sounds like if it's your intent to have that kind of restriction, it might help us all to sort of think about how that could be applied. I know we have had, it gets technical pretty quickly, but we have had, I remember with the gun training range, some decibel at the boundary level restrictions. That gets technical very quickly, but personally, I think the noise is something of a factor. And again, going to the precedent, how do we keep this community performance in without a death by 1,000 cuts? I think it is incumbent on us to think about that. Let's see. I think you've answered traffic controls. Oh, I had another one. You mentioned that you wouldn't likely have weddings during the peak orchard season. What is that season for you?
Oh, no, I'm saying like on a Saturday or Sunday, right, it would be difficult to.
But what is the season for that picking? Is it?
Well, it's typically June through November.
July.
No, the picking season.
Well,
June through November, you pick apples through November.
Oh,
okay. I guess again, I'm just thinking without other constraints, Saturdays are typically the days when everybody wants to be here, or, so I guess I'm just trying to think through, either those would be on days that aren't Saturdays during the season, or they would be concentrated in the spring. Have you considered, is your intent for this to be something that levelizes the revenue that you do off of the peak season, or is that not your intent?
I haven't really contemplated that. The weather needs to warm up for an outdoor wedding, so probably May would be the earliest a wedding would probably take place.
Yeah, typically, May and June are kind of big wedding weekends, I would say. And with respect to the events, I guess the other thing that I think the restrictions generally get to this, but there is no overnight accommodations on the site or anything of that sort. So I think we would want to be pretty clear about it. I think these are largely in the definition, but the problem with the definition is it is inherently broad, and once again, I think it's tough for us to just trust nice people to only do, what neighbors would be okay with. So I think we have a little bit of work to do, but I generally am supportive of trying to find a way to make this work. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
At different points in time, the attitude changes and things go up and down. And I think Mr. Smith here tonight made an interesting comment here and used the word precedent. And that's one word that the Planning Commission of BZA, the Board of Supervisors, love to use. And I think we're entering into maybe approving the event tonight that people will call back upon and say, remember when we did the Mont Media and set that precedent. We're not dealing with 600 acres here. It's not a 600-acre tract. It's a 36.5-acre tract. The fact that he owns 600 acres next to it is good, but we are dealing with a 36.5-acre tract. And there's not 100 cows on this 36-acre tract, as was read by the staff report. And I don't believe there's 10,000 trees on this 36 acres. There's probably 10,000 trees in the whole orchard, but not probably on this 36 acres.
It's, the fenced in acres is about 44 acres. There's 12,500.
You can't get 44 acres out of 36 acres.
The fence itself runs
Right.
into the
Yeah.
other part of the property.
So it appears to make the tract look larger. The fencing is not on the property line.
Correct.
So, Mr. Smith made a statement of precedent here, and he mentioned, another lady made a comment about other properties for sale in the area. And one of these other properties that are for sale in the area came in before us for a conference center, B&B or something in that order. And it had much more acreage, it had 800 acres, it was adjoining property. And the sky was falling on that event. And that particular property was a great distance off the road. And everybody had a problem with that, from noise to visual, lighting at night, and all these things. And, that's for sale, and that may be back in here. And there's a concern that they say, well, remember when you approved the application in front? And again, it was mentioned of Montpelier across the street when that was approved for an application. And that was subsequently sold, and that's off the table now. We have another application in here tonight for Deerfield, and that's 400 acres, beautiful property, just gorgeous property. Wonderful place for a conference center. So, maybe 10 years from now, we'll have 4 conference centers, event centers here within 2 or 3 miles of FT Valley. So at night, you can walk out on your porch and decide whether you want bluegrass, or rock and roll, heavy rock, or whatever, because there's different tastes in music. So you may have all these. So here we are going down this path. So we've got to be careful about what we're doing tonight. It was mentioned that this was a scenic byway, and Mr. Light brought up the question of shielding, of visual, a buffer screening along the road. There's none. So does that take away from the quality of the scenic byway, of having, 100 cars parked here? Probably does to some degree. I don't know whether it's terrifically adverse, but it does take away. So, we've got a question of screening here, and I'm thinking of other event places, whether it's a brewery or a winery or whatever around the county. And I really can't think of anything that exists today as close to the road as this property is. Now, we have Blue Rock out here, which is pretty close to the road, but they planted trees, the previous owners planted trees a number of years ago, and that is somewhat shielded from the view shed of 211. And this property is very close to the road, so it's a question of the view shed there. And we said nothing about lighting here tonight. It was a note sent in on the other applications coming to tonight about lighting, and I think we need to address the lighting here because it is going to go up until 10 o'clock at night, and I guess people will probably be there until 11 breaking stuff down and cleaning the place up. So there is a question of lighting here. And also the septic field. This septic field letter, I think was written a couple of years ago, was it not? No. I'm looking, this Warby letter was written May 8, 2021. Here, Soil Consultants is in the file.
And that probably would have been when the application time was put into the septic field. And I mean, the building was completed. The building went in, and then the septic field got added to the building.
Yeah. Well, there's a letter in here that was sent from Suzanne Holden over in Luray about the capacity of the system and this and that. And we're talking about, having, I think 250 visitors a day and some employees there for, 4 employees, 8-hour shifts. I guess if you have 150 people there for a party, the party begins at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or whatever, and I guess they have a few cocktails, a couple glasses of tea. These 150 people probably going to go to the bathroom twice. So that's 300. If you got 250 people coming in buying a bag of apples, they might go once. So it seems to me that there might be, this letter that's in the package to us has any relevance. It may be that, I don't know, does the drain field really have the capacity that we think it does to address your use? So
I think that's being somewhat cloudy here, whether there is the capacity for the Pacific use of 150 people for the events. So I think that needs some clarification. And
Al, wasn't there something?
I think.
I'm sorry, it's for discussion time. It's not open to the public at this time, except the applicant. For questions.
And also, if your property slopes down towards the road, doesn't it? This site? Basically, if you pour a glass of water on top of that with glasses of water, it would float, it would drain down towards the bottom.
Two different ways, but yes.
Yeah. And I think there's a little stream that crosses the road down there, that heads down across the road over to the Fletcher property, or drainage ditch.
There it is down there.
Yeah. You know, I think, as Mr. Light touched on, I think we need a better description of how the site, it doesn't have to be, you know, to the level of an engineer, but I would like to see a more specific diagram of where the actual parking is going to be, in the distance from any particular runoff areas that could be more fragile than others. I think that would be good to see here on this, on some type of plat here. And I would like to see a verification that these are the setbacks here, the actual setbacks after the building is built here, to make sure that we're truly looking at what we're looking at. So those some initial plans, and I don't think I missed anything. And I think how quickly you have the event, somebody brought that up in an email to us today, and I think that might be a valid concern. I mean, it would be more impact on the community if we had, you know, an event every month, every week, for June, July, and August. I think it would be better to break them up somewhat, you know, so that at least people won't be looking at something every weekend. So that's something to think about. So that's my thoughts that we better think about, because we're going to hear what we approve here at the end after this is done.
Thank you, Al. Well, you also bring up something that I wondered about too, although I think it's important when we talk about the gun range, we talk about is the not gun range, because there are actually no guns involved.
No bullets.
We got a lot of facts
There
that
are
there are
guns, there
actually
is
no
no
guns
bullets.
involved in the gun range. Michelle, how difficult is it to get a handle on decibels? I know that that's unusual, we do that, but I do recall decibels being involved in that application.
I mean, we have a decibel reader, so you just go to the property and take a recording.
And is that something that you could do? So you would be able to establish a decibel limit that would be appropriate for these events at the property?
Wouldn't you have to put it like 500 yards away, because that's the closest neighbor?
You do it at the property line.
Yeah, that's what we did with the other application. And it worked very well. And
I'm just curious, you put it at the dwelling, like not at the property line, you know, that's kind of arbitrary, isn't it? I mean, it should be at where the dwelling is in relation to where the music generates.
It's always been done at the property line where the music leaves the property.
I mean, people may be using their property outside of their dwelling, so we've always done it to the property line, and I know in that particular instance, the concern was for pets of the neighbors, and that the noise was adversely affecting the neighbors' pets. And so we did it to the property line because, of course, the neighbor could be out with their pet on the property at any point. So it was something that we established. It helped everybody have a better comfort with the application. That being said, it is very hard to chase decibels. And, you know, it is an honor system thing that we hope everyone will abide by. But I do think it is a worthwhile exercise in an application like this. Absolutely.
How do you exercise this in an application? I mean, nobody would go out until there's a reason to go out.
So that's what I was going to say, actually, when you did. I think I was going to start from an even more general sense. I think again, addressing one of the questions we had earlier about what are the conditions, what are the rules. we have some discretion to preserve the current community and the nature of the current community and the peace and serenity of the neighborhood and surrounding property. So that's kind of our general authority or our general terms for considering, potential restrictions. And then it's not very specific from there. So this is why I made the comment earlier that I feel like if you're truly wishing to have those kinds of restrictions, we should be able to find something around that. To the other points, I think, if we have trouble with the septic system, it's easy enough to require other means of septic control for events of a certain size. We have the ability to recommend those additional conditions, and I appreciate you bringing up lighting. And I would also just add, I know that back in the 90s when we got our bed and breakfast permit, we had to plant screening so that people couldn't see 6 cars parked by our house. So there's a strong precedent for that, and I do think we should take these things seriously hard. And I agree that we should get clarity on the precise parking area. And perhaps, and I forgot to ask this before, do you have a pretty standard music venue? Is that in the building, or would that be in the tent, or that's something else that's kind of to be determined?
Literally, once we had them before, we didn't have a tent, they were on the front porch. And then another time they were actually in the tent. And back to the screening, if you really recommended screening, that would mean planting along 231, and you would actually kill the view shed on that day that there's no cars. So all of a sudden, you create a 10-foot barrier on a stretch of 231 where you actually would not see the fruit trees and you wouldn't see the orchard. So I'm just saying from that perspective.
Well, you should be careful because you're making an argument for not allowing the parking.
Yeah, Gary, Mr. We're not, again, we're here if this works, great. If it doesn't, it's not going to impact the orchard operations itself. It's just, it came up as a request from people that came by and said, well, this would be great if my daughter got married. Now, I can't say what music the bride will want to hear. So,
and with all respect, I appreciate that you all have something in mind that is completely unobjectionable, and we would just like to make sure that we set the boundaries in a way that you can fulfill that vision, and to the point about the next application and the one after that and the one after that, that we can apply similar standards to any application and maintain the harmony of the community. And I think this gets to the point of, there are plenty of parcels that are in the 40-acre range. So there again, often we've relied on the size of the parcel, but the fact that you own the neighboring parcel, doesn't really help us from the zoning standpoint, I guess is what I'm getting at. So
I'm just curious, so if I wrote the application that it encompassed the entire farm, would that be different?
I would certainly address some of the buffering requirements, although I don't know, that's an interesting point.
It's all owned by the same
parcel.
I would be really excited, really rushing to approve this, if this site was on 600 acres back off the road where the improvements are, where there would be no visual impact. You couldn't see it from 231. You drive into the property, this driveway, you see this beautiful mountain in front of you, you see all the rolling land and the cow. I would be jumping to approve it if this was back where the house and the other barn buildings are. That would be a wonderful site for this. Wonderful. Wonderful.
That would probably defeat the purpose of being in the orchard, but I understand your point.
And I think too, the fact that if you have 50 to 100 cars here starting to come in there, and people going by, they see the orchard, unless you post private event or have people out there, I think potentially other people thinking that it's a special picking day or something going on there, you're going to have other people coming in thinking that it's a public event that's going on there that is going to create problems. So I don't know, but I don't think this is ready to approve it tonight.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what is a reasonable cap.
Well, I did go ahead and document some of the things that we all expressed concern about, or that I thought we all might share concerns about. One is the visual buffer needed for the parking area along the road. Downward shielded lighting expires in 2 years. Maximum of 4 hours of music per event, with Michelle to coordinate with the applicant on decibel levels. No music before 10 a.m. or after 10 p.m. No more than 2 events per month and not on consecutive weekends. No overnight accommodations. And I wasn't sure how you would want to capture the septic field concerns, Mr. Henry.
I think somebody needs to review the letter, if that has relevance upon its construction, and review the proposed use, and tell us if the new proposed use is compatible with the absorption of the drain field that was moved.
Could I ask a question? Is it your intent that the events would only use your septic, or do you, I mean, you
It's perfectly fine to have a portable unit that they're required to bring in.
Well,
So that would be-
this will prove if or not it needs that. You know, I'm not looking for somebody to come out and dig anything up. I'm just looking for somebody with the qualifications to look at what was built and what the results of the study that was done on the soils, if the two are compatible to your use.
Yeah, so Marge,
I don't think this is something for Madge, I think this
Madge,
is.
sorry, she came in through her consultant, we dug everything that she wanted to, and we tested where the septic field was supposed to go, and that was part of the approval, I mean, where it all went, design was laid out.
But that was for the use of the property with the orchard and people coming in picking apples, right?
Correct, for whatever the.
But now we're talking a different use, a more intense use for a shorter period of time in the evenings, after the property's been properly being used for the orchard during the day already. Right?
It'd be kind of hard to do it in the same day.
Well, you said you're not gonna close the orchard down. I mean, you're
Well,
gonna
that's
pick
right.
apples from 8 o'clock till noon or 1, then you're gonna close it down, get ready for the night. If you got apples to pick, you're not gonna let them fall on the ground on a Saturday in September.
Right.
It looks like Megan's note said the office has not yet issued a sewage disposal system operations permit for this facility. And
That
so,
was updated a couple,
that's been reconciled already,
it's on file.
Michelle?
Here's the letter that concerns me
Oh,
right there.
okay.
That letter right there concerns me.
I would just also note, and again, I'm no expert in this, but I would prefer to Al's point, it is a pump-up system, so I think there are more steps in it, and capacities could be affected by frequency of use and that sort of thing, so I don't think this is I think this is a reasonable question to pursue.
To have a further evaluation of the septic system that would support the application. Or not.
Or
support the
just,
application.
yes, or,
Inform the application.
yeah, I think so.
And like, I don't think that even a site visit is required. I think a review of that and what was built, somebody with the expertise can determine.
Yeah, there's probably some rules of thumb for event, but, yeah, either that or it may just simply be easier to say you need to have portable sanitation.
So if it's a pump system and you put too much out there in one evening, it's gonna flow out. You know, it's not, and then you got a wet spot. And then does the car get stuck or somebody falls into it?
None of the parking is within the area.
Yeah. That we've seen yet.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, the other thing, I do think, we didn't ask for a full site plan, but it generally has been our practice for these kinds of requests to have a designated parking area so that we again, know what we're dealing with and understand the parameters for a buffer.
And I think what I heard was that we don't require a full technical site plan. It's something roughing in the ideas of what parts of the events will be where, is something reasonable for folks to expect.
My understanding was I drew all that out and submitted it with the
I can see a
application.
parking area designation, but I could have easily overlooked
Yeah,
that.
I thought it was the tent location, the building location, the parking.
The building and tent. Oh, I see, yeah, you do on this,
It needs to be a little bit more sophisticated than that.
So, let's see, so that's the, yeah, I mean, to me, the other thing that we evaluate, most of our zoning requirements have, you know, a certain number of parking spaces for a certain number of people and that sort of thing. So to me, you know, the location and area for the parking would be pretty reasonable and easy enough thing to determine by, you know, simple measurements.
So documentation on the parking.
I think that you're a very educated man. You've got a lot of talent. You've done a lot of things in there. I think you'll probably have something in your files that is probably a diagram of this property, probably the scale, that's probably legal to 10 by 13 or something like that, that you can take and in a couple hours, sketch out pretty closely, maybe measure the setback with a tape of the building, where the building is, the size of the building, where you're gonna put the tent, where the drain field is, where the well is, where the entrance is, where you propose the parking, and that would be fantastic.
Okay.
We're not looking for you to go spend $5,000 with somebody to do a site plan.
What do you think reasonably the parking area should accommodate in terms of the count of cars? 75 for 150 people?
If we're willing to allow the 150 event, that seems reasonable, unless it's possible that we have some relationship between visitors and parking spaces in the ordinance somewhere. Do we have anything like that?
So in addition to the 150 people, you're gonna have
Staff.
You're gonna have staff, you're gonna have the band, you're gonna have people doing the food. Does 150 people include, it's a wedding, does it include the bride's and groom's family?
Well, to be clear, I think he made the comment that you probably park 500 cars, so this doesn't seem like it's the issue.
You're not gonna park 500 cars on 36 acres of land that's already covered in fruit trees. You're not gonna park cars in the fruit trees, are you gonna run over them?
No, I'm saying that there's about 5 or 6 acres.
Okay, and you're not gonna park any in the lowland either. So you're taking land out.
So, I think you understand the questions we're trying to ascertain, so my sense is that, and I don't know where you were headed, I think, thank you for keeping that. My sense is we might want to move to, you know, table this and have those questions, but I don't know, I think maybe some of those who seemed more comfortable would like to move otherwise, but that's where I would like to go.
How are y'all feeling down at that end of the table?
I certainly understand the perimeters of the 36 acres, if you will. Unfortunately, as much as, and I've had to respond to this, there is no noise ordinance in the county. Bottom line.
But this is why this is a special exception.
I understand.
Because it's something we don't normally allow and we're making an exception for it.
And if you're gonna do a decibel reading or whatever, everything affects that. Winter, cold, heat, humidity. So, and if that's the precedent you're gonna set, that's fine, but that could be, I think, consistent across the board.
Well, I do think the general standard of the current configuration and the current locality is to be taken into account. We always do that, and I guess this gets to the point about the progressive cumulative effects of these decisions. you know, once you have two, how could you argue that a third one wouldn't be any worse than having two? And each one is less impactful than individually than the last one. So I do think in our general charge to kind of preserve the harmony of the current neighborhood, this is within our purview. Not to say I have a clear answer on it. I don't disagree with any of the points of the challenge of trying to do a decibel standard, but you know, maybe other ways to get at it, especially if the applicants themselves are desirous to keep it quiet and serene.
Anything to add?
I'm in agreement with Mr. Light and Mr. Henry as far as the septic's concerned. I think I'd like to see a little bit more clarification. That's a more intense use over a shorter period of time that may cause problems. Easily mitigated through fancy trailers.
So how do we feel about the comment about the scenic highway and buffering the view? How do we feel about that? That's a very, that Mr. Light talked about, that's a very relevant item. We take the byways serious and give them any integrity or protection.
You know, vegetative buffers have been part of our charge for a long time. I don't have enough of a vision of the property to know if blocking the cars means, you know, blocking the entire view. You know, I'm not quite there, but I do think, again, if we have a more precise vision of where the parking is, I think it will allow us to have a more precise vision of the visual impacts of the parking, and we can kind of go from there. I think part of what we're struggling with now is it's not really clear enough for us to know if what we'd be recommending would be more harmful.
Well, I did drive by the property and pull in to see the sight range pulling in and pulling out. And I was actually surprised at how good it was, but I did note that most of the property is in trees, which is great and the way it should be. But that most of the area that was clear for parking was visible from the road and seemed to be to the front of the property. So I do think that vegetative buffers are appropriate. Now what that looks like, it can look like any number of things. It doesn't have to be completely blocking, and obviously a lot of times of the year it won't be as effective, but I think that it's still a worthwhile endeavor and something that we should keep in place and be even-handed with in applications. Because if we don't do it here, we're going to have a tough time doing it other places. And I did capture that in the conditions that I thought we would be on board with.
Well, there are a couple of things. I think, you know, in terms of the lighting, having downward shielding lighting should be a requirement. The septic field issue does seem to be remedial in that you can have those portable toilets, and then you don't have to worry about the septic field. As for the parking, there must already be some idea of how many cars can be parked in your parking lot, and because it's already accommodating probably the same number of people, maybe not at the same time, but over a period of time, for the orchard. So I'm not sure what the increased use actually is here. So I'm not sure what it is you're really interested in buffering if you already have those cars in that parking lot, and people haven't been upset about that, as I take it they have not been. The weekend issue seems to me certainly not more than 2 events. I mean, it does seem that they should be limited to no more than 1 event per weekend. And on the decibel issue, I don't see anybody going out there with a meter. It seems to me that, and every band I've ever heard, no matter the venue, has amplifiers. As was pointed out, we have amplifiers in here. So the question of how you control the sound is perplexing to me, but if the neighbors at Belmead also have events that haven't disturbed the neighborhood, I'm not sure I understand why these events would disturb the neighborhood, and you could just have the 10 p.m. cutoff. So that's my point.
Anything else? Well, it sounds like we have a few things to work through with the septic concerns and downward shielded lighting, vegetative buffer. It sounds like I don't get a consensus where folks feel about decibels.
I think you can't look to Michelle to be the sound police. I think Mr. Sis put in that it's a very difficult thing to do. And you know, can always, by the time she comes in from Page County to do this reading, it could well be 11 o'clock. I think hopefully the time, the issue of the time, 10 o'clock, will hopefully take care of that. And I think they're good people, and I think if it creates a problem, that I hope they respond to it. And we won't have to look at that issue.
And we do, I think the 2-year review cycle kind of gets to that.
Yeah, that really does help, and I think gives neighbors a way to let folks know if there's any kind of issues, and the applicant address the issues so that, you know, that the situation can be resolved and it can be renewed successfully in the future. So I think you all have heard our concerns about the septic and some additional site plan details. Did you have any questions for us to bring back?
Mr. Chairman, should we do a motion to table this and state specific things that we would like the applicant to specifically address?
That sounds good, that's where I was headed. Do you want to make a motion, Mr. Renner?
Well, I'll try, you can supplement Mr. White and everybody else can. I'd like to make a motion that we table this application to give the applicant an opportunity to address the issues we talked about tonight in terms of explicit description or detail of the septic field, where they can handle the capacity we're discussing in terms of 150 people. Also, a site plan to address the parking for cars, and also a statement of lighting, proposed lighting that they are going to require at the site since it's going to be used at night, and the down shielding of the lights, and proposed buffing of the 231 corridor along the road for the parking. And the sketch plan will show the location of the house, the well, the septic, and the parking and the buffering.
Sorry.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Oh, I just want to ask one thing about the buffering, just as an idea.
We're not there yet. We have a motion on the table, we need a second.
So if I could just clarify in a way that might be helpful to the applicant, what we are asking for is for the applicant to return with information that they feel would address a reasonable screening of the visibility of the parking. That's what we're asking for in that.
Is that a second?
Yes, that is. Therefore, a second.
Thank you, Gary. Is there any further discussion? Did you all have any other questions?
No, just one quick comment on the buffering, because this is also important to me. Would a black fence count as a buffer that would break up the car? So in other words, you see a black fence all the way down the road. So if I put a black fence...
Vegetated buffer, I believe, is what...
Well, that's my question, visual buffer.
Yeah, I thought I heard vegetative, but I don't remember if I did, because that's what we've always done. But if we could amend the motion to be vegetative, whatever that word is.
Vegetative buffer.
Thank you.
Are you still in that amendment, Mr. Henry?
Sure.
Second still in favor?
Second is intact.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll see you next month. When your public hearing's over, you're welcome to leave. You're welcome to stay, of course, if you like, but you're welcome to leave. Thank you very much. All right, that takes us to the last item on the agenda this evening, special use permit 230201, the 405 tourist homes. Do you have some information on that for us, Michelle?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Forster owns property located off FT Valley Road, Deerfield Lane, which consists of 400 acres. He would like to offer 4 of the 5 homes on the farm as short-term rental homes, while he resides in one of the homes, likely house number 134. But would like to maintain the flexibility should he decide to move into another one of the homes. Deerfield Lane is a private right-of-way, but only serves the homes located on the property. The property also runs on State Route 231. The health department reported that the septic systems serving the dwellings were all evaluated, repaired, or upgraded in 2011 and 2012, and VDOT commented they have no objections to this request.
Thank you, Michelle. And we have a public hearing scheduled this evening for this matter. Is the applicant present?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. It's good to see you. Do you have anything to say to speak to your application?
I'm John Forster. I go by my middle name, Edwin. Wife Cassidy would be here tonight. She's putting our 7-month-old to sleep. But I have a few bullet points. I would like to echo a lot of the sentiments I've heard tonight about the traffic concerns. Obviously, I'm on 231, and I've got my wife and kids driving on these roads, coming out of these driveways too, and I feel the same way, quite frankly, about these roads. And I know this is outside the zoning board's purview, but it sounds like there's enough community support that maybe we could go to the state somehow and get this. I think a big step would be to get the speed limit reduced on 231, because 55 is, frankly, ridiculous. But anyway, I know that's not fun tonight. As it pertains to my application, my wife and I are absolutely committed to the comprehensive plan that perfectly aligns with why we want to raise our children here. And the revenue from these rentals will allow me to keep this property in my family and maintain it in the pristine condition that I have received it in. That's my part of Rappahannock. It's my responsibility to keep it up. And I'm going to answer any questions. Thank you for your consideration. And Mr. Lyon, I think I owe you a little bit of an apology. I probably didn't have the most welcoming face when I saw you today.
It's not the worst thing that's happened to people driving in someone's driveway.
Yeah.
So thank you for welcoming me once you knew who I was.
Yeah, I had last leaf season someone coming down the driveway, and they said they told me I knew it was private property, but I just wanted to take a couple pictures. So a little abrasive, but all right, thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. All right, and I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on these tourist home applications. If anyone would like to speak to these applications, please come to the microphone, state your name and the district in which you reside.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Lewis L. Jackson, and I'm a Piedmont District resident. We actually own 100 acres adjoining Piedmont Farm at the back of the property. I'm unsure exactly which 5 buildings the application stated. I know it was the main house, the farmhouse, the 2 cabins, I imagine, and there's another structure attached to a barn close by the main house. Is that correct?
There's 3 houses. One is behind a set of garages.
Yeah, that's what so if you have, I don't object to having it a couple of tourist homes. I think 5 is a bit excessive. If you had 1 couple in each house per week, per year, That's 520 new neighbors that I have per year. And that's not why we moved to Rappahannock 20 years ago. And so while I don't want to, I recognize that, yes, it's a revenue stream for both the county and foresters. I also think it's a bit excessive to think that that many people should be good stewards to the land that's in conservation easement.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yeah, hello. I'm Annie Williams, also from the Piedmont District, and my husband and I's property also adjoins Mr. Forrester's property. And I just wanted to kind of echo some concerns that we've all talked about tonight, one of them being the traffic. The entrance of Mr. Forrester's home is just next to a rolling road. It's in a dip that's a very dangerous dip. In fact, I have to stop and count 2, 5, 6, 7 to make sure that nobody's coming over that dip. And I find that a very dangerous place. There has been accidents there before that have injured people in our county. And the people coming in and out of that area, as well as the 150 new people that will be going to weddings down the street, are going to be very unaware of those dangers. So that's always been a concern of mine. And I will also echo that the sound does travel very strangely in our area. When we were having our house built and living in our garage, there was no way that I could tell where the workers were on our own property because of the way that things echo through that area. And so I have a little bit of concern that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that we don't know and we're not going to be able to tell where they are. And I do ride my horses down in that area, and there's a lot of shooting that goes down there. And I would just be concerned that if there's a lot of shooting that goes down on right now, what will happen when you have a lot more people there? If that's a normal thing that's allowed to happen and with no noise ordinances in our county or anything like that. I'm just concerned. I don't want to get killed either way, but I have nothing to, I just think we need to be careful what we do with 231. It's one of our last beautiful places, and as a business owner, having come up before you guys before to argue kind of similar things that I wanted to do on a commercial area, I think we have to be very careful about what we're going to do with our private areas. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this application?
Is it appropriate for me to kind of comment on what?
You'll have another chance.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So I have a little bit different take on it. So I would like everything to stay the same all the time. But I would much rather see some tourist homes there than the property divided.
It's not in.
And, I'm sorry?
It's in conservation.
I'm sorry, let's just, if one person has a microphone at a time,
If you
public
want to
comment
know.
is given at the microphone, not from the seats, please. Thank you.
well, I don't know how many places they can be divided into, but two things I was thinking was, one is there are fewer, probably less traffic because tourist home people usually come on weekends. I guess they could come for a whole week, but then if we had full-time residences there would be traffic probably every day in all those houses. And as I say, it could possibly be divided, and we could see a bunch of McMansions all over. So I would rather have, it permitted with some restrictions that you've been talking about before. Now, I think these houses are not really visible from the road, except maybe the main house I can sort of see, but anyway, but if there's going to be any more lighting or anything like that, then it should be down shielded and that kind of thing. But it seems like a reasonable use of the property. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Anyone else wishing to speak? And with that, the public hearing is closed, and you had something to add?
Yeah, so, I also share your concerns about the gunfire. I'm one of the main, I do a lot of shooting on my property in Big Hunter, and I do a lot of shooting outside of that. And that's why, and I would be perfectly fine with the board putting this restriction on the property, because, like I said, my main thing here is I'm raising my family on this property, and I do not want to, this will stop the day it interferes with my family. So, my plan was, even if I don't get this restriction, is I would have a first restriction of the people staying within the immediate vicinity of the property that they have rented for the weekend, for the safety and shooting reasons, because I hunt the property actively in the winter, and when I'm not shooting, I need to know where people are if they're on the property. Additionally, I echo what, I'm sorry.
Sharon Luke.
Sharon Luke said, I'm committed to keeping this property within my family, and if it's not the short-term rentals, it's going to be long-term residents. And I want to just echo the sentiment that she raised, that I feel that short-term rentals are way less impact on the land in terms of traffic than occasional short-term rentals. I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Since this is in Piedmont District, did you want to speak to this application first?
Have you rented any of the other houses or dwellings recently? Anybody been living in those?
No, sir. We had the property listed for sale, I'm sure many of you know, for the past 8 years. It got passed down to me and my brother. We were kids, and I had to start my career. I was in high school, college, and started my career. Now my career is finally in a place where I can live full-time on Piedmont with my wife, who stays at home full-time, is going to be homeschooling our children full-time.
I know it's in the application, but I couldn't find it. What's the total acreage we're talking about?
400.
And you have any cattle there?
Yes, sir.
Are there any thoughts to restrictions? I was talking to Mr. Ritter here about people with dogs coming, you know, you're going to put them on leash or tell them they have to be on leashes because of the cattle, or?
Oh, no pets would be.
Oh, no pets. All right.
Yeah.
And your lighting, you're not proposing any additional lighting?
No change, and I could stand corrected, but I don't believe that any of these buildings are visible. Maybe in the dead of winter when there's no leaf growth, but I mean, most of these properties are under structured. I do not believe are visible in any other property. Even the main house on 231, like I said, in the dead of winter you might be able to see it, but right now I don't believe you can see any of it.
And keeping consistent here, I'm looking at the letter from the Virginia Department of Health, and I'm trying to decipher this. It goes through each one of the buildings, the upper log cabin, the office building, the farm manager's house, blah, blah, blah. And the last sentence, basically, this letter should in no way be construed as a guarantee for the future performance of the systems. So I'm assuming that everything is up to date as of 2011, everything passed, it was good?
Yes, sir. We've used it for private events since my wife and I have been back on the property, and everything works as normal as we would want to keep guests in. Pertaining to the septic system, plumbing, electrical, basic accommodations.
Because the one was talking about, bear with me here. Oh yeah, the now serve justice and conveyance to line one bid field. Okay, drain field. All right, that answers the questions I had up to this point. So.
Mr. Schuman, did you?
Yeah, I was just a little concerned about the septic as well. And I think as long as, you know, whether somebody's renting it year round or if it's going to fail, it's going to fail. I mean, I don't, that just seemed a little squishy to me anyways. I've got no objection. It is unique in the fact that I think this is the first one that's had 5 on a single piece of property, but it's a property that's large enough to manage that. And I think not allowing anybody to hunt your property or shoot up there is probably a pretty wise idea.
We got a letter from Mr. Seiler, Mr. and Mrs. Seiler.
Amazing how the properties everyone, all of the other structures. Yeah, I guess. Can I ask? Yes. There was one objection raised about the rolling road entrance. That entrance only serves the main house. The other 4, and really it's only 3 because my wife and I are going to live in the other houses. And so it's 2 cabins, which can serve no more than 6 people total. And the one house, all are served by the private entrance, Deerfield Lane, which is hundreds of yards from the closest property.
Wait a minute, it's right across the street from where my driveway is, Deerfield Lane is.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was thinking on my side of the road.
Yeah.
But, yeah, okay.
Okay, so in this letter, he says that it appears that a total of up to 50 people could be lodged in the 5 tourist homes.
I said that?
No, this is a letter that we received, and it doesn't seem like that's at all possible. Do you have a total number in your mind of how many people?
Yes, ma'am. A map that I included in the application might help, but the back cabin is a king bed, so that'd be 2 people and a pull-out couch. So that's 4 people in the back cabin. No more than 2 people in the other cabin. And then the 2 houses that my wife and I are not living in, the main house we would want to take care, I believe the county has a cap of 10, no matter what.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so the main house can easily sleep over 16, so we would be capped at the 10 on that one.
Yeah.
So that's 10, 14, 16, plus the other house, you'd have 3 bedrooms in there. I mean, I'd probably want to apply to be capped at 10 on that one too. So, but I'd be willing to take a concession on that, obviously. It's a 3 to 4 bedroom house, depending on how we set it up. So that's at least 6 to 8 people in it. So.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, a 1-bedroom house is 2 people. I understand you're looking at it as a vacation property, that you want to maximize the number of bedrooms. But I'm also listening to your neighbors, and their concern is the intensity of the use.
I think what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, is that we need, when we get to the point of addressing the occupancy, is using the addresses of the properties.
Yes, we can do that also, because I see the 61 Deerfield Lane is 5 bedrooms, and so I do see that that would be what we would expect to be 10 occupants. The 88 Deerfield Lane is 3 bedrooms, so we would expect that to be 6 occupants. The 134 Deerfield Lane was 4 bedrooms, so I would say maximum that should be 8 occupants.
And we'll live in there.
And 180, so it's really, are you really only applying for 4 tourist homes, or you want to apply for
I would
all
like
5?
to apply for all 5 to be approved so that eventually I can move my family around based on, my family's growing quickly. We plan on having a large family.
And then 180 Deerfield Lane is 1 bedroom, so to my mind, that should be 2 people. And 210 is the same way, because I understand that as a vacation home, you'll want more people to be able to spend the night there.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a lot of use on this parcel. And the difference between people that you can accommodate overnight versus people that could normally live in those buildings is pretty substantial.
I would just comment, I'm totally on agreement with the 1 cabin being 2 people. I think if I brought some pictures maybe to the next meeting, the other cabin is 2 stories. It's 20 by 20, completely open floor plan. The upstairs is a king bed. I think it would be a little, it'd be okay, in my opinion, it'd be okay if the downstairs is a pull-out couch, like if a family had 2 kids that they want to stick on a pull-out couch, but they slept on a queen bed upstairs in the living room. But
That would be maybe 4, as long as they're part of the same family. And we have done that
Yeah.
recently with applications, as long as it's parents and minor children within the same family.
yeah, I mean, even 2 couples, I think, if they wanted a remote weekend, and it's 2 full beds, and 20 by 20 open floor plan. But we can look at the pictures of the cabin, y'all can decide for yourself, but.
Yeah, but
I'm
the
open.
septic is only approved for one bedroom, so that's 2 people.
That's the defining factor.
Okay, I'm willing to take that concession.
Tommy, or Steph, did you have any additions for this application?
Well, it's looking to me like what you're approved for is closer to 28 people.
Is that with the house we're living in?
Yeah, minus the house is looking.
Let's see, the house, what's the number?
134.
Oh, good point. It's 20, then in that case, it's 20 people.
Sorry.
220,
220. 210, the back cabin is a king bed upstairs. And a pull-out couch in the living room downstairs. On 400 acres, and Deerfield Lane's private road, and I mean, I don't know how many, it's probably 1,600 feet from the closest property line at all points.
Do you have anything additional, Steph?
It's looking to me like closer to 20 people. It would be permitted as to the number of bedrooms, rather than 50, that's all.
I think the other way to look at it is if you split the property 3 times and get, you still have over 133 acres each split, and put those properties on it, that person applied for a permit like this, they would be approved, I think, pretty easily.
I have no more questions.
Thanks, Steph. Do you have anything, Mr. Adams? I'm sorry, if we have comments, we need to use microphone and address them to the board. I appreciate that there's a lot of interest in the application, but we need to be able to discuss it and to be able to hear what's being said.
Mr. Foster, do you, that 134 is the main house? No.
That I would live in. 61 is the large dwelling.
It's a big
Okay, so 61 is the one you live in, or is that the
134. Do we have the map? Is it possible to pull the map of the property that I attached to the application?
Yeah, the stars on it.
Are you planning to renovate the house that you live in?
No, I would live in it. I just would like all 5 to be approved in case at a later date I move my family to a different house. So if I may, I would be living in 134 right here with my family. I would like all of these circles of the different buildings to be approved, so one day my family grows to the point where maybe we don't fit in 134. I move them to 61, and I can then move the tourist home to one of the other, to the house we were living in.
I don't know, it looks like to me that you then need to come back and do that.
And I figured that might be on there. I'm willing to advise that. I mean, that's perfectly reasonable.
That would be my take on that. I think we shouldn't approve it now, and you're currently living in it. But sometime you decide that you're gonna move to the other, then if you come back and request that as a tourist home.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just, obviously, the application process is going to be $700, and I would like to get it all in one go around. And technically, the way the online sites work is you could do a room share of your house. I would never do that personally, but that is, something, you can't rent out a bedroom in your house.
So I did pull into the property over the weekend. I didn't see that it was visible from the road, any of the rental units, but I could see where maybe it would be visible from other neighboring properties. So I do think that if any additional lighting is added, that it should be downward shielding. I did also have concerns about dogs with adjoining farms. We've heard that recently with applications, that dogs should be leashed at all times and under constant supervision. You've said you're willing to agree to no firearms on the property. I can tell you, I'm very sensitive.
No hunting or shooting on the property.
No hunting or shooting on the property by folks using the short-term rentals.
Yeah.
I would just say I am very sensitive to these two applications being so intense in use and in such close proximity in an area that currently doesn't have these sort of features. And one thing that I've learned tonight that I take a lot of comfort in is that you are living on the property. And that means a lot, because that means if something goes wrong, or when something goes wrong, you will be there to address it promptly. And that to me is a big plus in your favor on this application. And to the point that I would say the owner needs to be on site when the property is rented. And if you're not on site during any rental time, there should be a manager that's available for your short-term rentals. Because it's an intense use, and it's a remote area. You don't have great cell service out there. So things can go wrong very quickly. And we want to make sure, a lot of folks don't know our roads. A lot of folks expect to have cell service everywhere they go. And for neighboring property safety as well as their own, we want to make sure that these sorts of accommodations are made. No pets, downward shielded lighting, no firearms associated with the rentals. And I do think we need to figure out what the appropriate maximum number of people per housing unit is. And I also am very much in favor of an expiration date on this application, because I do think it is an intense use, and I think, again, a 2-year limit would be appropriate, at which point you can come in and reapply. And things may have changed. You may be living in a different house and want to alter the application. And certainly you can do that, and your neighbors can have input on how the application has worked out and what they might like to alter in the application.
Yeah, I would add to your point about me living.
I'm so sorry, could you use the microphone?
Sure.
I should have reminded you more.
Yeah, I just add your point on top of me living on the property. I do all of the work myself. Mr. Light, you might have seen the 2 water heaters out in the yard.
No, I missed that.
Okay, the back cabin, I've been replacing 2 water heaters for the past 2 days. I do all the own work myself, and I'll continue to do that. And I would, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would object to the 2-year, at least longer than 2 years. As I stated earlier, the size of this property and the distance, we could use the Google Maps, measurement. It's where, I believe we're 210 is the closest property to any other house, and it's that house in the middle left of the screen there. And I believe that's 1,600 feet, and it's not visible at all. There's a hill. That middle field is a hill and a cow pasture.
It's visible. It's my property.
Okay. And I believe it's over 1,600 feet just to their property line. And I think any other application with 133 acres would, if this property was divided 3 times, would easily not even be blinked at to be approved. It's my opinion.
Thank you.
Maybe we just stay there. I kind of continue on this theme, because your comment about the shooting was, you didn't really say you wouldn't have the guests have done, but I presume that's easy. But I think what I was getting at, these are not separate parcels, so you mentioned restricting the use of the guests to the area around the houses, how do you envision doing that?
What's my
They're not-
enforcement policy?
Well, they're not fenced areas or anything, right? So I guess I'm just seeing the first thing that I would do if I were in that cabin is just start heading toward the hill, and I'm just wondering what.
And I know that's gonna be the number one comment I get, and it's very easy. It's an active farm. I actively hunt the property, I actively shoot, I need to know where people are, and I raise my family there most of all. I don't want, and my main concern is that it's like, the first thing that's gonna chop this down for me is gonna be start to affect my family. And I think it's easy to include a line in the rental listing that you are confined to the immediate area around your rental. And there's no second chances, there's no warnings. If you're fine to be outside of that, you're asked to leave.
So
that's how I'm gonna run it.
So the intent is just somehow defining a radius or something around the property is what you're envisioning.
Yeah. I mean,
but they're not fenced and they're not separate parcels, right? It's all one parcel.
I mean, some of them are fenced in a very large field, but yeah,
There's no clear area that they'd be staying in.
Yeah. And I pretty much the line I think for me would be, your car to the rental, because all the parking is immediately around them.
I guess the other thing that I wanted to emphasize, it kind of came up earlier, 5 rentals on the same place. First thing someone's going to say is, boy, there's room for the whole wedding party. And you realize this is an application for overnight accommodations that wouldn't allow, those kinds of events. And I would suggest if we go forward, we've been talking about the number of overnight guests, but in some instances, we've also sort of talked about the number of visitors. And in a property like this where you could have kind of a natural gathering, I think that might be an appropriate consideration. Ms. Smith, I share your view about maybe a creative way that we could give some flexibility about which house you're in, but to the point about, I do think one of the things that's important to me about this is it is kind of preserving a family property, and that kind of implies that you're there. And I don't really care which house you're living in, but I don't know how we could really deal with that without asking you to come in and get a review, but maybe we could spend a little more time on that. As far as the road and the traffic and the intensity of use, yes, having driven up there, I think you can see and be seen by the surrounding properties, but, residential short-term rental in existing structures on this scale of property seems to me to be about as limited intense use as I can ever imagine for it. And so I generally support it.
Yeah, that would be my main comment, because that seems to be the main concern is the amount of use, and a full-time resident is always going to be of more traffic than the occasional visitor. And I am trying to make this property work, make sense financially. So if it's not short-term rentals, I'm going to start pursuing how to go with it.
I think we heard the theme tonight is how do we keep the farm together? Every application we've reviewed tonight is the challenges of large amounts of acreage, and that's the way it goes tonight.
And I'm
going to be easy on you. So I first saw this property in 1980, and it was going downhill. Family had it, Tolan's, and the money was disappearing. Father had disappeared, made his fortune, tearing apart salvage ships from World War II, and so pieces of the farm was getting sold off and everything. So ever since that time, things have gotten better for that piece of property. And when Ralph Gronge got it, he improved the land, improved the buildings, was raising deer there. I guess your family built a new house, or he built a new house?
He built
a new house. He tore the old house down and built a new house. So the properties continue to get better, and thank you for that. Our ordinance says
that you have to have 10 acres to have an Airbnb. So if you want to do 4, in theory, you needed 4 10-acre lots. If he's doing 5, you needed 5 10-acre lots. You would say, thank you very much, here's your approval. Here you go. You got 400 acres. And it's a wonderful piece of property, open wooded, got multiple road frontage. And you got perimeter fence in the whole place? Along the road, there's fences along the road pretty much every place.
Definitely, yeah. I think the only non-current fence would be the back of the property, which is the wooded.
So pretty much, people start walking over your land, they hit a fence. So easy to keep the people on the property. You got plenty of land to repair a drain field. You know, I see people that have properties like this and they evolve in their uses. A couple of years ago, I was reading some of the biggest sources of income out west now was tourism, people coming in, looking at butterflies, looking at bird watching. So you got enough property here that it may become more diversity there, where people will actually like to come out and walk the property, put a chair down and watch butterflies or birds or something. So you got opportunities here that you probably don't even realize yet that you can do with this property. Whether they can come out and, I don't know, you're going to be raising cattle, anything else, sheep, anything like that?
The long-term goal for me is to raise all my own cattle. There's a slaughterhouse on the property that you might be familiar with from the deer operation. And once I can make this property make sense financially, my long-term goal is to take over the farming myself, and I'll be back for a permit for the slaughterhouse because I would like to sell.
So you might be exposing people to agriculture, you know, in different ways. So I think you've got a great opportunity here. You have a diverse stream of income that maybe some other people this size acreage doesn't. And I think the property's buffered. I don't see, we approved the property down the road here the other month up at Port Town. I think it was 3 rentals on 200 acres with no review. So, I mean, and this is in, the neat thing here is too, is that overlooking him is his scenic easement that has pages and pages of restrictions on what he can and cannot do with the property that's on there. They come out every year or two.
I'm meeting with them next week.
Yeah, and they review the property to see what you're doing with it. So, I mean, the stewardship here is above normal to what you see with property. So, I think the only thing you have to do here, if you want to move forward, is that the application says 4 out of 5. So you got to tell us before that you want to use. You can't just say tonight I want 5 when you said before you want 4. So unless you want to come back with a new application.
Yeah.
So I think you need to tell us the 4 addresses you're going to use, and that's 4. And you haven't started doing this. You haven't violated our ordinance on collecting taxes on these. You haven't rented these out to anybody yet, have you?
In full honesty, in December, I did have it, the back cabin on Airbnb. It rented for 3 weeks, and I was...
Did he catch it? Did he catch it?
They did not catch me. I was completely unaware that there was an approval for Airbnb, and I actually sent the application to Michelle, which was the wrong application. She directed me to, I was immediately taken off, and I would start the application.
Did you pay the taxes on?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We're in budget season right now. That's the most important question.
I think with this application here, we should make a recommendation of approval and recommend that he downshields his lights, any lighting that's required, and no hunting of discharge of firearms by any tenant. Is this going to be an Airbnb or VRBO?
That's something I have to look into further. I believe the clientele that we're looking for in the main house would be more on VRBO, and the other houses would be Airbnb. I have to research that.
So if you want to put a dog on a leash, that's fine. You know, put those 3 conditions. I think everything else is taken care of. I don't want to do anything to him that we haven't done to anybody else. And we haven't put it, particularly down the road where that property up there at Port Town, they gave them 3 and no restrictions.
I think the Port Town application that they had, is that the one that had an existing B&B for a long time? Is that the part of a spring application?
Yeah.
So they had a long history of successful rentals in the county with no complaints. So it was sort of a review of that property.
That was only 200 acres. This is 400 acres.
Yeah, I know.
Twice as much.
So I guess to my mind, the one other question is how many people for each of these dwellings?
I think what we came to here, you know, with, you take the bedrooms and you multiply it by 2 is what you get. So if you take all 5 properties, you got 28, and you gotta take the one you're gonna take out and then subtract that from 28 is what you got.
That'd be 20, I believe, is what we
So
came
which one you taking out?
134 will be the house, this house we live in.
I disagree with that. My only experience with the Airbnb was someone who rented a hotel room. I went down to Virginia Tech Notre Dame game. We couldn't get a place to stay. I was almost in West Virginia. It was that bad. They had a hotel in West Virginia, and we moved to their house. Now, are we going to chase people out of being out in the open about renting their homes? If I find out that up in Chester Gap, I can get a couple $100 for several weekends in a row for people to stay in my place and walk up the Appalachian Trail. And I can go stay with my parents every weekend for a month. Do you want me doing that under the table? Or I mean, I feel like that should be part of a permitting process. I don't think excluding one of the houses is appropriate.
Well, I don't have any problem excluding the house as long as he says 5 out of 5. He says 4 out of 5.
I believe in an email
Is that
chain
right?
with Michelle, I confirmed that I wanted all 5.
Yeah, but I think I was just pointing out what more word that or
Well, what does
that
the
you lived in.
application say? I mean, one place it says 3 out of 4, another says 4 out of 5.
I think if we're going along the lines of what we do to other people, if someone applied to have their house rent out a bedroom in their house, that would be approved. So,
Well, but to be clear, going back to something Smith mentioned, this is an unusual property in that it's very remote, it doesn't have coverage. And I think there is a consideration for this kind of complex to have a resident, owner, and manager. And this is a tourist home application. We're not talking about Airbnb or VRBO. Our definition of tourist home is the temporary use of the structure. And so it is, you know, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of, well, shouldn't it be okay for someone to rent a bedroom and do it on the table? I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do, but our ordinance talks about tourist homes as rental properties for, you know, one set of tenants, as though it's a residence. It's sort of it's like you're just somebody's living there, but they're only living there for a short period of time. So, you know, I think with the application that's before us singles out 134 as the residence. So my suggestion is we move ahead with the application as it's specified in 134.
Mr. Light, I perfectly agreed with that 3 minutes ago.
What happened?
What happened was that I saw everything in the paperwork that was on our table that said 4 out of 5. But here's the advertisement. The advertisement did specifically lay out the 5 units for 5 people. So it was advertised as 5, so you can consider 5.
But I think the way to get our hands around that is, if we're going to approve all 5, the way we get our hands around what this question is that one of the 5 at all times shall be inhabited by the owner or an on-site manager for management of the property.
Well, absolutely. Well, he's got a right to build another house probably. If he wants to build another house on the property, and his DOF easement allows him to do that, then he can do that.
Well, then he can move into that house and he'll still be he'll be in a house, he won't be in one of these houses.
That's
He'll
true,
be on-
but
he'll
he
be
still
in-
has the right. He still has 5.
He can rent
So
5
we-
at that time,
Well,
but he'll still be on the property.
there's no reason why he can't have 5 approved and live in 1.
I think we're
That's
agreeing,
what-
but we're just saying
yeah.
it differently.
Yeah, while we're on this topic, I do think there's another question that I'm now recalling came up with the Miller property where it's multiple dwelling units on an individual parcel. Shouldn't that be part of this consideration as well? As I recall, we had to come back on that one and do a separate special something.
Because they had multiple homes on the property, they had to be approved for a special exception for more than one dwelling per parcel.
Why wouldn't that apply here?
So this is a SUP for tourist homes, so the SE would be a separate permit addressing all the homes. I guess if he wanted to later build a sixth house, he then would have to come back for that special exception.
But we're saying the 5 existing parcels are grandfathered, and their grandfathering survives through the special use. Okay?
So Mr. Curry, you can shake his head.
I saw that.
I'd also just,
I'm sorry, I took us off track. I think if I could try to put us back, if we approve 5 and add the condition that the 5 are approved, but that there's the owner reside, or the owner or an on-site manager resides on the property at all times, that would cover both the scenario of living in one of the 5 houses or building another house that he's entitled to do and living in it, as long as he's still living. I think that's what we were getting at. So what's wrong with that from your perspective?
If you say that the owner will live in one of the houses, that's okay.
Well, we're giving it even more flexibility if we just say the owner or resident manager resides on the property. That allows them to live in one of these or another house that they might be entitled to buy.
Cool.
So I think that's what you were agreeing on before without realizing.
I think so. Is there any other discussion on this application? Not, I'll endeavor to make a motion. I would make a motion that we recommend approval of this application to the BZA or Board of Supervisors, whichever is empowered to hear this application for approval or denial at that time, for the 5 tourist homes for the Forrester property on 231, with the conditions outlined in the staff's packet, along with a few additional conditions. One is no pets. Second is any additional lighting shall be downshielded. There will be no use of firearms or hunting associated with the renters. There will be no additional day visitors besides the folks, the people renting the units. And at all times, there will be either the owner, manager, or a resident manager on the property.
I have a question. Why are we determining that no firearms? I mean, shouldn't that come from the owner? I mean,
I think the owner's agreeable to that, as I understand it, and it was a concern of the neighbors.
There's no hunting or shooting.
No hunting or shooting.
Yeah.
but and we base it on what? Why?
Some of the neighbors, well, in particular cattle and horses, the neighbors riding horses nearby. And I think the owner's agreeable to it as well. He had mentioned that that was something he was willing to agree to.
But what would be the difference if he's hunting?
Well, it is kind of unnecessary restriction, even though I would enforce it personally. I see what you're getting at, but it's like I'm shooting or they're shooting.
He's familiar with the land, he knows where the neighbor's houses are.
Why don't you just?
He knows where she likes to ride her horse.
Can we, Ms. Smith,
Yes, sir. I said I'd endeavor to make a proposal. I'm willing to.
can we just say that no use of firearms on site by renters?
I
What
thought
about
that
renters unaccompanied by the owner or manager?
no discharge of firearms without the owner, manager's presence.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah.
Well,
It's
just to be clear, I think you're always entitled to have your own personal guests come to your house and go.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a rabbit hole that we don't need to go in. Your point about having the residents stay between their car and the house seems to me to imply a much stricter standard than, don't shoot your tires between the car and the house kind of thing. So I get the sensitivity about firearm restrictions, but this seems pretty straightforward, and you always have the right to take your friends hunting with you.
So do y'all want me to strike it from the motion? Because I'm willing to strike it from the motion.
I thought your motion was great. I'd like to second.
Wait, say that again about the hunting.
Did you capture the additional conditions, Ms. Summers?
I'm just unclear about the firearms or hunting by guests. Is that in or out?
That was the.
Why don't you, if he's okay with firearm issue, why don't you just say no use of firearms by any tenant? Because if he wants, this is why, leave the hunting part out. He might have somebody that wants to come out to go bow hunting. And will pay $1,000 to stay for 3 days to bow hunt. That's fine, And if he develops a clientele, he can address that at a later time. If the people that rent can't shoot a gun, that covers everything about a firearm on site, I think. Am I missing something?
Well, I'm just concerned that you're suggesting that this could become a commercial hunting ground in some way.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that somebody may, you go down the road one property, and there's 800 acres being leased for heavy hunting use. Firearms, everything, okay? So here you got 400 acres, and she's got wildlife on the property. And if he wants to pick up some fee income from letting somebody come and bow hunt, why not?
Well, I don't have a problem limiting the restriction to whatever you said, firearms rather than.
The bullet is what you're worried about, right? Bullet comes out of the end of a gun.
So what exactly is the wording you're proposing there, Mr. Henry?
No firearms used on site by tenants.
That works just fine. Thank you. I'm friendly to that amendment
And I'm
and
friendly
change my
to
motion.
seconding that friendly amended.
And then the other part of the motion that I think we need to work through is, do we need to work through the number of people per building?
What about just saying that the number of people is restricted by the number of approved beds?
That's captured in the staff conditions.
Okay, so it's
Do you have that?
5
Is it in there?
5 is 10, 3
Yes,
is
staff
6. I just want to make sure that we're on the same
Okay,
page.
so, 61 you're filling, there's 5 bedrooms.
So that would be 10 people max.
You don't have people in here.
I can put that in there.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we all hear this because this is an important part of the application. So 5 would be 10, and that's for the main house. And then 88 is 3 bedrooms, so that would be 6 people, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then 134 Deerfield Lane is 4 bedrooms, so that would be 8 people.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the 180 Deerfield Lane and 210 are both 1 bedrooms, and so that would be 2 people.
Okay, yes.
I currently have 88 set up as 4 bedrooms. It can be arranged, has 2 bathrooms. So I would like to try to apply for that to be 4. It's two more people.
Well, that's not the paperwork we have in front of us tonight.
Hey, you're winning so far.
Yeah, shut up.
So I think that clarifies the number of people, and then of course as you or a resident manager, and we did capture that in the conditions, right, Michelle? Thank you.
Yes,
Move
ma'am.
around amongst the buildings, it may drive that number toward the high side or lower it substantially if you should be living in a big house. So, we just have that awareness that that's how it's parsed out. And I would include that in my motion, and you seconded it. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Do we have any additional discussion? All
So the
right.
firearms piece is, what exactly, I'm sorry, I just got convoluted now, I don't know. It's no firearms by
Michelle,
tenants?
could you repeat the language that we arrived at on firearms, please?
No firearms on site by tenants.
No firearm usage.
Usage, okay.
Yes, sir.
And you're okay with that?
It's kind of a moot point to me because I don't want some city slicker outside my family just popping off at their end on their, I want to keep it to the around the area, so yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion?
Did we say no city slicker? No.
That's all, very slippery slope, Jerry.
Christine, was there a 2-year review that you mentioned earlier?
I just would say that I did not put the 2-year review or any period of time attached to the application. Review is subjective, and in my opinion, reviews aren't very useful because they don't have any teeth. It's just a discussion. I have in the past recommended expirations on applications. I did not think that that was something that was people would be in favor of tonight. I did not tack that onto the application recommendations.
I'm sorry, but did you not reference the staff recommendations because it has this permit terminates upon
It does
sale or
permit,
transfer of the
yes,
property?
standard language is it does terminate on sale or transfer of the property. So it's not in perpetuity. But there's not a number of years attached to it either.
Could I just ask for the same benefit that was passed to Massey's, I believe, that if it goes to my family, that if it stays within the family, then it does not terminate.
I'd be agreeable to that.
Yeah. The permit terminates upon the sale or transfer of the property outside the family.
Is the second still in place, Mr. Light?
Yes, since I said it.
Okay. So, we have a very convoluted motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it very much. You're welcome to leave or stay, as always.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Annie. Have a good night. Drive safely.
I'm sorry, it's fortunate. I actually called 6 or 7 times.
Okay.
Let's take a brief recess. We do have a public comment schedule on this evening's agenda. If anyone would like to address the commission, please come to the microphone and state your name and the district in which you reside. Now it's time for public comment. Anita. Seeing no one wishing to comment, we'll go ahead and move on to old business zoning ordinance amendment regarding vehicle access to events. And Michelle, did you have any updates for us on this? My recollection is that we had some proposed language, and it was sent up to the county attorney, and the language parsing out private versus public events didn't hold water. Is that where we're at?
Yes, I believe so. So the language on the screen is based on your last meeting. There was, I sent this out to the commissioners and did hear back, I think, from Mr. Light, asking again about the private versus public. And Mr. Goff's opinion was that to make this stick within the public safety realm, which is what allows it to apply to all uses, those that the county is allowed to regulate and those that the state forces upon us through agritourism, that you really can't divide it that way. He didn't think. So if there's concerns that the language is too onerous as written for everybody, then maybe you need to look at ways to make it just onerous enough for everybody, and not try to divide it into private versus public.
May I?
Please.
To me, this makes it dead on arrival. I don't see a scenario in which this change is an improvement over on public safety that is greater than the nuisance and extra burden on anybody who wants to have an event on their property. So to me, if this is the legal opinion that is paramount, if we don't have a choice to differentiate, then I would move that we recommend that this notion be dropped.
I had a hard time getting my hands around it too. Also, seeing all the sunrise Easter services in areas that probably wouldn't conform to what we're setting up to do here. I think that we're going to have problems with that. And also in talking to emergency personnel that respond to events, they couldn't seem to recollect a time when there was an incident that prevented them from responding in a timely manner that would warrant this sort of language. So I think, I know what this is getting at, that there are things coming out of Richmond that we're trying to stay ahead of, but maybe we just need to talk to Richmond instead of trying to come up with language.
So we beat on this thing for a year and we're talking about dropping it? I understand. So we beat on this thing and we talked about dropping it, we couldn't do it a year ago. But then we said we had to do it, the supervisor said we had to do it. So we juggled this thing for a whole year and now we just say, no. Again. Is that right?
Well, just to be clear, when we grappled with it, we came up with language. It was, in my view, far from incidental that I inserted the language for public versus private.
Yeah.
And that, to me, means that we grappled with this to our best ability, and our recommendation, we're not dropping it, we've done what we were asked to do. We're considering it, and we're recommending that this be, this recommendation not be advanced.
So this is, you're just taking a long way around to where I said we went. Your circle's bigger than my circle, okay? So, Mr. Curry, the board wants something.
So let me, ultimately, I think procedurally, the board informally referred this some time ago. I don't know if it was a year, it was some time ago. And the planning commission, I think, wrestled with it and didn't advance the concept. And then the board of supervisors, the majority of the board of supervisors said, well, we really think this is important. We really want you to think about it. And so they referred it to you via resolution saying, here are some specific words that we're going to pass if you don't do anything about it. We're going to put to the public to consider what their input is if you don't do anything about it. But hey, you have an opportunity to frame it in a better way than we have.
No, you don't.
The board. So at this point, if the planning commission chooses to not do anything, the board's empowered to hold a public hearing for the language as referred in the resolution. How they come out the other end, I don't know. Alternatively, the planning commission could seek to hold a public hearing on wording that you think is better and refer that to the board of supervisors. And then the last thing I'll say is that the board has scheduled a joint meeting with the planning commission on May 1, principally to have a public hearing for the ordinance amendment to reassign SUPs to SEs. And I think you could probably all talk about this together, why planning commissioners think it's problematic, and then during that dialogue, perhaps the board is convinced that the cure is worse than the symptom and it goes away, or the board would say, thank you for your input, we're going to do what we're going to do.
I think that last one is the solution.
Yeah, I'm in favor of putting it on the agenda for May 1st and having a dialogue with the other board members. And as I said, and I think this idea originally came from Mr. Schulen to give credit where credit is due, instead of trying to stay one step ahead of what comes out of Richmond. Tell Richmond, or ask Richmond to please stop chopping holes in the bottom of our agritourism boat.
Yep.
And then we don't have to do things like this if we can just get left out which they have done on occasion. So I think that's a great agenda item for the May 1st joint meeting. And do you need a motion to add that to the agenda here?
Any one board member can ask for an item to be on the agenda.
Oh,
so-
great. Well, as a board member, I'll request.
Do you need a board member on the planning commission to say, get this off of our agenda, we don't need to see it anymore?
No, the chairman can take it off of your
Okay,
agenda.
good. So we're done with this,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we already told them that.
Unless y'all four have strong feelings about it, we're gonna make it go away.
Perhaps we should extend an invitation to our representation in Richmond to maybe attend that May 1st meeting.
No.
No?
I think
They're busy.
I think a really great letter is in order.
Good.
And thank you for that recommendation.
Could I, just on that topic, could I just remind people that I hope to participate in that hearing remotely, because I won't be out of town, if that, I think that will be possible, if I can do anything else.
Yes, you have the necessary policy, and the board meetings are all by Zoom, although we are limited by technology, and at the board's last meeting, technology did not agree.
That was at the school.
We never have had an issue in this room though, so it's
No,
always the
that
first time for that.
That was,
Mr. Chairman, we have another item on our agenda here tonight.
We do, the Berkeley Group zoning ordinance update.
So, Chair, if I may.
Yes, of course.
So, the Berkeley Group tailored Phase 1
Yeah.
to address what they perceive to be your concerns. Ms. Cobb watched your meeting, and we talked, and then she submitted. You looked at that last meeting, you just received it. Since then, the Board of Supervisors had it on their agenda, and they authorized the award of Phase 1 to the Berkeley Group contingent on the Planning Commission accepting the scope.
And there were not changes material since that one.
So that's where we sit with it. Thoughts or any motions that we want to go ahead and make with that?
And they're ready to go towards the end of May for your kickoff meeting.
you know, I actually thought they did a pretty good job of incorporating.
I move that we accept the revised Phase 1 proposal as requested.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And let me just interject that they told me they'll have their comments on the sign ordinance by May 1.
Wow.
So if I do have them by then, we'll throw those on the agenda too.
Okay, so that's our
That's
next
faster than we did.
agenda item here tonight, so we'll just look forward to catching up on that on May 1st also. And we just have our list of zoning ordinance amendments from the Board of Supervisors, and we can discuss that with the board on May 1st also. Roundtable discussion, anybody have anything?
Where's the joint meeting again?
In this room.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And any other thoughts, questions, comments?
And that will be during the 7 PM session?
Yeah, bring your comment.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.